just went live. Hey y'all. So if you are joining us on YouTube, you cannot connect with the people that are on our Zoom webinar, but we definitely are kind of checking out both.
On
so
YouTube. Welcome everyone on YouTube. We just went live.
Sorry guys, that was my fault. And so we will be checking the comments in both. Alrighty guys, so let's get into the nitty gritty of why we're all here. So we are here to talk about the anatomy of a strategic one-on-one. So for those of you who follow me for a while, you know exactly how I feel about this. You know that this is a topic that I'm super passionate about. Can you guys all see my screen okay? Is it big enough for everybody? Yes, no? Can you all see okay? No? Alrighty. Okay. So for those of you, again, that don't know me, my name is Melissa Peoples. I've been doing this now for 25 years, and my whole goal is to help other EAs crush it. Just gave you guys an update about what I'm doing, and I'm super excited to be connecting with you guys today. I do want to kind of really quickly go over what's coming up next. As I said before, because my schedule has changed a little bit, I'm going to be focusing really intentionally on how we're going to be teaching sessions going forward. So in October, let me move this up so you guys can actually see it. So in October, we're going to be talking about the strategic one-on-ones, and then we're going to be going into strategic planning for 20 and 21. And then I'm going to be joining BASE. If you haven't heard of BASE, it's a really cool app for EAs, and they're going to do a free summit on October the 22nd. So I'll be speaking at that. And then in November, we're going to be focusing in on writing your professional development plans for 2021, performance planning and goal planning and all that good stuff. And then we are going to be closing out the year. So these are going to be the topics for the next 3 months. And I'm super excited to kind of really be able to focus in on all of the really fun, exciting stuff that I'm excited about. All right. My husband is waving at me that we have like an issue. So let me just check in really quick. Can you guys all see? Can you not see? Sorry, I'm going to get out of it. One second, guys. Technical issues. All right. So I just, oh, you guys were seeing the, thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me switch it up, guys. Can you tell I haven't done this since my daughter's accident? We're going to share again. Come back. All right, we're going to share one more time. Thank you guys for being patient. This has been since July. You can tell I'm having a moment. All righty, let's start over. There we go. How's that, guys? Is this better? My computer is having a moment. Thank you guys so much for being patient with me. There we go. Can everybody see? Yes, can everybody see? Awesome. Okay. All righty. So let's get into all the really good fun stuff. All right, so let's talk about what we're going to be going over today. So we're going to be talking about the keys to a successful one-on-one. We're going to be talking about how you can level up and strategize more effectively with your executive business partner. We're going to explore conversation starters. So for those of you that are struggling to say either I don't have enough time with my executive or what should I be asking, we're going to deep dive into that. So please make sure when we're doing, well, really when we're talking about the strategy piece and then the conversation starters, like grab all of your questions together so that we can make the most use of our time. Alrighty, and then we're going to do Q&A. So I'm going to say, if you have questions, like please reach out the chat. Nick will wave at me and we'll stop and talk about it. I want to share with you guys really what was for me the big shift in my role as an EA. And so I was supporting this really amazing executive, and this is what he said to me during a one-on-one. So he said to me, when you allow other people to circumvent our one-on-one and you've moved me around, and then he paused, you make me feel that I'm not your priority. And I was really blown away. I was super shocked because that was really not what I thought I was doing. I thought that I was providing opportunities for other people to meet with him who I deemed more important. But what I didn't realize is that as far as he was concerned, I was actually prioritizing other people and their time with him versus mine. And that was a really big problem for him. And so when I had this conversation with him, it really did shake me, and probably the biggest conversation of my career as far as that mental shift and what did I needed to do for that strategy piece. And then as I continued to realize that this was a really important thing that I lean into in a different way, my career just exploded because people started to see me more strategically, and I was able to think more strategically because I was spending more time with my executive business partner. And so pretty much everything that we're going to be talking about has really started from this one piece. I want to share with you things that I did wrong and things that I did successfully, and hopefully, and I would like to say that this is not a one size fits all. And I have so many people who always say to me, oh, Melissa, your executives must have been so easy. Not the case. I have had executives who have been really interesting to part with, but also executives have been amazing. But I will say that across the board, this is something that is really challenging for us in our role because, again, not a lot of people truly understand what we do, and they have not seen that strategic partnership in a really successful, powerful way. And so sometimes they really struggle with this piece. So I don't want you to feel that just because I share some of my success stories, that it was always roses, because it certainly wasn't. I've really experienced the gamut of it, but I hope that you learn from my mess ups and hopefully you can avoid them. Alrighty, so let's talk about what I think are some really important keys. And then I'm going to I'd like to pause and talk about some of these. So the first one I think is time. Like how much time, what's the right cadence? I hear the gamut of my executive won't give me any time, or I get 30 minutes here or there. And I will say, for those of you that follow me, you know how I believe between an activator and a strategist. And I will say that understanding how your executive works and the way that they process information is actually really key to understanding how much time that you should be spending with them and when. So for example, if you are supporting a strategist, you could absolutely spend an entire hour with them and deep dive into strategy pieces very easily. If you are supporting an activator, they probably are not going to have the mental stamina because just their mind goes every which way, and it's really challenging for them to sit down and do this in 1 hour straight. So you have to really kind of learn how to break it up. I always say that you should be spending at least 1 hour with your executive a week. And I know that for many of us, that is really challenging. And that's just the goal. If you are spending no time with your executive right now, I would not expect you to start doing that next week or even by the end of the year. You kind of have to work your way up there. So understanding what the right cadence is, understanding how they work so that you know how to approach them. This is a really great opportunity for you to practice getting brain dumps from them. And I think most executives do this in a very unintentional way sometimes. They'll call you on the phone or they'll text you, they'll do all the things, and they'll tell you everything that's been on their mind for the last 6 months or the last week or 24 hours or whatever it is. And then it is really challenging to sort of keep that going. So you're really taking this opportunity during these one-on-ones to train them how to partner with you. You're going to ask the right questions. You're going to spend time with them, allow them to do a brain dump, and then you can start picking and choosing where do you help partner. I mean, obviously, there's tactical things that you don't get to pick and choose. because I'm always going to pick the meter minutes and never the expenses. So there are going to be some things that you can't choose, but things that are more project-based or that's really on their mind that you can help drive the business, you can start to pick and choose where you can start to partner with them. And then it becomes very cyclical, which is an amazing thing for you to get to. And then the other thing is kind of going back to delivering the content to them in a way that they can consume, in a way that they will consume. So back to the idea between an activator and a strategist. If you have a activator, then you want to give them their information up front. You want to be really clear about what the expectation is, how long it's going to take. Hey, listen, we're going to go over a calendar review and we're going to, hit these 5 points. And then maybe you meet with them. I mean, I know people who meet with their executives every day. Some meet like 3 times a week or an hour. So it's really depending on them and how they consume content. Do they need to see a preview of something? Do they want an agenda? A lot of times strategists will like to see what are we talking about ahead of time. So you have to understand how they work before you can present content to them in a way that they find valuable and they want to begin to invest this time with you. So I want to pause for a quick second and chat for a moment on, does anybody have any questions on that one piece? No? Okay. Oh, sorry. I'm having such issues today. Thank you guys for bearing with me. Okay, so number 2 is a strategic focus. So what I think is really critical here is, yes, there is a calendar review, and we're going to get into that in a minute. But a calendar review and a strategic sync are 2 different types of a one-on-one with your executive business partner. And when you are focusing solely on the tactical pieces, then you'll never have time to talk about strategy. And then you are in this rut and this cycle that it's very hard to get out of. That you're always talking about hey, did you do this? And I need an update about this. And oh, by the way, you need to do these things. Which is very different than a strategic one-on-one where you're talking about how are you driving the business forward? What do you need? Do we have the right information? Where are the pre-reads? So all of that information will come when you're able to have a very strategically focused one-on-one. Also, you want to talk about what are the right questions to ask? And we're going to get into that in a little bit. So you really don't want to have an opportunity where you're meeting with them, but you're actually not talking through anything, right? So if you're just marking off a bunch of to-do things so that they can close out their time with you and go to get to something more important, the problem is you're not building that business acumen so that you can help them in the future. And then you're stuck in this cycle of forever just doing very tactical one-on-ones and only talking about task-based instead of strategy-based. So you want to ask the right questions so that you can start to understand their thought process, what they like, what they don't like, what their preferences are, building all of that stuff in. And then you really want to use this time to build your business acumen. Now, if you have an activator who's never partnered with an EA in this kind of a way, then you're not going to have an opportunity probably to sit down with them for a full hour at one time. So you have to be really strategic about when you're going to be asking these questions, how do you tap into what they're thinking? So in a way that's unobtrusive to them, so that you can build your business acumen and start to show value in a really intentional way that you understand and they understand that you're driving the business forward. And then the other thing that I think is really key is to prioritize your time. So if you were like me, you were moving, I was moving myself to make other people available. And that was a really big miss. And I did not realize that it was a miss until he said it to me. And once I had that conversation, I really spent a lot of time being reflective to try to understand, what did that actually look like? Why was I moving myself around? Who else did I think was more important? And why did he feel differently? So he was telling me that spending time with me was the most important thing. But as far as I was concerned, I was trying to get everybody else who, sent me a message, said, oh, I need to speak with so-and-so. And I'm like, oh, yes, absolutely. Let me work that out for you. And it was just, I was forever moving myself. And so what ended up happening is that I wasn't able to spend the right amount of time with him. I wasn't able to talk about strategy or to get his mind on things or to ask the right questions. And so he was feeling very siloed from me, and I needed to fix that. So I thought it was really important to make that shift. So I made the decision that other people, if they didn't have time to meet with me, then they didn't have time to meet with anyone. Now, I'm not saying that you have an executive who's automatically going to feel that way, but you can definitely teach them that this time with you is really valuable and important. And one of the ways that you do that is you prioritize your own time. One of the things that we had in that conversation, in that one-on-one, is he really kind of looked at me and said, look, you own the calendar. So when you don't make time for you and I to meet, like, who else can I look at and say this is their responsibility? So if you're not prioritizing your time, then one, you're letting everybody else have a front seat at the table and you're choosing not to sit at it. And I'm like sitting here shocked this entire time. But that really did resonate with me because it forced me to look at myself and how I was perceiving my role. And it forced me to realize that I was dealing with personal bias in the role, that I was approaching the role of an EA as like, I'm just an admin type mentality versus I'm a strategic business partner who's an extension of my executive. And we have to spend time together so that we can drive the business forward. And that was the mental shift that I needed to make. I 100% believe that partnership requires an investment of time. And it's time that we really have to be intentional and value and prioritize, because we can get so busy doing the thing that we actually don't focus on the partnership piece. And if you're going to have a really strong partnership, it's going to require you to spend time together. It's going to require you to level up. It's going to require you to understand the business, to build your business acumen, all of those things. And this is the one thing that I like to remind people, that as EAs, we should not be afraid of technology. We should be really deep diving into how we work and understanding productivity hacks, understanding the way that we work, the way that our team works, so that we can build in the bandwidth to do all these things. Because that's the question we always get, right? Is like, who has time to do all of this? And to me, the answer is you have to make time and you have to prioritize it. It's an investment in you. It's an investment in your career. And you're going to be able to grow and take your career in a completely different place when you're able to prioritize yourself and your time with your business partner in a different way. The other thing that I want to say is, like, if you don't value your time spent together, they won't, right? So no one else is going to prioritize this if you don't. So I see Nick is like throwing me some questions. Okay, so one of the questions was, how did you respond to your boss when he told you that? I just was really honest, and I just basically said, wow, like that's not what I thought I was doing. And so I am of the opinion that all feedback is a gift. And I know people say that all the time, but I really truly took that to heart. One of the things that people will say about me consistently is that you can give me feedback and I will absorb it and consume it. I'm not going to try and argue with you. I'm not going to try and give excuses. I'm just going to try to understand, like, why did I do that? Why did they feel that way? Like, what could I have changed? And so I was just really open. And it really, truly, honestly did change our relationship, because they were able to be completely honest with me. And it was probably not an easy conversation for him. But he was able to be honest. I was able to, openly tell him, like, hey, that's not exactly what I meant to do at all. I thought I was doing the complete opposite. I will work on that. Okay, so to the person who asked if the deck will be available, yes, you will all get the deck. Okay, and so the number 4 is demonstrating value. So for those of you that are struggling to have this partnership with your executive, just simply because of the fact that they've never seen it, or you've never seen it, or whatever that looks like, is when they start to see the value in spending time, and you start to deliver results, they're going to start to see, like, this is worth it for me to spend time with him. And maybe it's 10 minutes, maybe it's 15 minutes, and you work your way up. But as you begin to show the value, then you can prove to them like, this is really important time that I'm going to help you drive for the business. If you don't give it to me, that's not going to happen. But you have to make that circle complete. So spending, like prioritizing the time, making it valuable, delivering those results, and like back again, they'll begin to want to spend time with you versus never have time for you. Okay, let's get into like big picture thinking. So one of the things that I mentioned earlier is like understanding their communication style and how critical that is. So if you follow me, you know I talk about this all the time, but I talk about it so much because I think it is so incredibly important, and literally nobody ever talks about it. So the question really is, when you understand how someone communicates, you understand how they give and receive information, what are their communication preferences, what are their meeting preferences, like what is happening in their brain, you can start to understand as their EA and design, like when is the right time do I approach them about these questions? Because at the end of the day, there is never going to be a time where you're not going to have tactical things that you're going to have to deal with, right? Like there's going to be questions, what do you want to do about these things? Or this is where I am. If you don't understand how they work or how they think or what their communication style is or what their preferences are, if you don't engage in that level of thought work, then you cannot be a thought partner. And so taking the time to understand how they work, talk to them about it, talk to other people about it, and start really analyzing that, you'll be able to plug in and say, like, I know that they are not going to want to be interrupted here. I know that they prefer, and maybe for an activator, they prefer text messages, updates all day long versus a block of time, right? So understanding how they function will help you to be able to like pick the right time and learn when they are going to be the most engaged. The other thing that I think is really key is your one-on-one should not be a laundry list of actions and updates. Now, sometimes that's absolutely unavoidable, but I would really encourage you to think about using collaboration tools and tech as a one-stop shop. If they have a question, this is where it is, versus that's all you do is spending time and it's sort of like a checkbox, especially if there's someone who's not going to give you a lot of time. Just, you know, you want to make sure that that's not where you're asking, have you done this? And what about this? And I need you to sign this, or, you know, whatever those task things are, you want to make sure that's not the majority of your time. I want to really talk about separating the difference between a calendar review and a strategy sync. So a lot of, and, you know, again, I talk about contextual switching a lot, but when you're partnering with an executive or really anyone, and you do constant contextual switching. So for example, if in my one-on-one, I'm having like, hey, have you done all these things? And oh, by the way, here's all these meetings that are coming up. And oh, by the way, have you thought about all these deliverables? That is a lot of contextual switching, and it usually goes off the rails. And most executives are like, just forget it. It's very unproductive. You don't walk away with a lot of really actionable pieces or too many actionable pieces. So you can really break these up in different ways. So sometimes if you want to have an executive who really enjoys doing brain dumps, have a session like early in the week. I actually start off every week with a strategy sync. And so this is really where we're kind of talking through what's happening this week. What are your priorities for the week? We're making sure that the calendar is reflective of those priorities. And you know, anything that came up that's like an, oh my God, this is a fire. We talk about it on Monday, everyone is activated and then they go do the thing, right? And so those strategic conversations are different than a, you know, calendar review of like, hey, these are like 12 things that you need to do. And, you know, what do you want to do about this calendar invite? And is this the right attendee? And blah, 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 all that stuff. A calendar review is different than a strategic sync. And if you have an executive who's not going to give you the amount of time, separate them all, right? So maybe you do a brain dump on one day and like, hey, what's top of mind for you this week? Or what are your priorities this week? And then you separate that from a calendar review that's like, hey, just as a reminder, these are all the things that are coming up. Don't forget, like, here's the pre-read. I've scheduled time for you to like check out this pre-read. It's due back to them by Friday. Like, those conversations don't always need to be thrown into one, and we do that way too much. And then number 4 is guard and value your time. And so when you do that, you're able to approach your one-on-one strategically and with intent. So in my opinion, every time you go into a meeting with your one-on-one with your executive, it should be very intentional, and you should approach it with like, this is what I need to get out of it. Is there anything that I need to know? Is there any feedback that you can get from your executive? Like, really deep diving into their brain. And this is really growth for us in our own personal careers, because when we are not flippant about the time, and I think sometimes we can be that way because we spend so much time with them and we are so connected, that sometimes we're not as professional as we can be. And most people, when they meet with your executive, even if it's not written down in a super formal one-on-one, they're going to have things that they need from them as a takeaway. And I think that sometimes we can definitely approach it more casual than we should. Okay, so when you're thinking about a strategic one-on-one, some of the things that I want you to think about are like really big picture items. So I'm not going to be talking for this specific purpose. I'm not going to be talking about like those calendar reviews, and we can talk about that in the Q&A. But this is really when you're thinking about what are the 30, 60, 90 days. So like, what are your priorities for the quarter? And then this is really you taking the initiative to reverse engineer all of the actions that are coming out of those priorities. So if you know that boards are happening, if you know that they have to have their performance goals written by the end of the year so that it can cascade down to the rest of the team, like, are you providing time for them to do all of those things? So that 30, 60, 90 day review is really critical so that you guys can get on the same page, so that you can get ahead of things and get rid of fires. And then you want to deep dive into those deliverables and figure out how you can help them drive the business. So if you are not taking the time to say, hey, here's a view of the next 100 days. These are all your major deliverables. These are all the major meetings or, you know, deliverables that you have. These are all the things that are top of mind in the business. Then this is where we're going to get things done, right? Like, you've got to have the first draft for the all hands by Friday, you know, or whatever, the 10th, I don't know. And then I have scheduled working time with you to do these things, right? So you're really taking that big picture thinking that you're working through, and then kind of drilling that down into deliverables that you can help drive, right? So if you know that they have an all hands coming up and they need to have time to review the deck, or they need to have time to practice their speech, or whatever it is, you're able to kind of work with those outside of the org to say like, hey, we need this by this date. Where's the pre-read out? So you're able to partner in a different way when you're in the know and you've spent time talking about it and you understand what their preferences are, what they like, what they don't like, and all of that good stuff. Then you want to really kind of think through like, what are the priorities for the month? At the end of the month, what do you have to get done? And somewhere in your, you know, however many times you're meeting with them in that month, like having a debrief. What did that look like? Did we set the goals for the month, and then did we accomplish them? And you are definitely going to have ones that you don't and some that you do. Great. You mark that off as a win and you put it on your brag sheet. And if you don't, then you want to talk that through. Like, why did it not work? Like, what happened? What was the miss? And then, you know, by the time you do that over and over and over, and you force yourself to be accountable, when you're able to look back, there's real change that's happening because you're able to look at the miss, understand the gap, fix it, and make sure that doesn't happen going forward. And again, it's kind of like drilling this down. So you're going to go by quarter, then by month, then by week. And then this is an opportunity where you're asking those really deep, heavy questions. You're building your business acumen. You're asking them like, okay, help me understand the life cycle of that decision, or help me understand the process that you prefer for an all hands? What is your preferences for calibration that's going to happen at the end of the year? Like, these are all things that nobody's talking about, but truly as an EA in 2020, these are things that you should be thinking about. So one of the questions that I love asking is, how much time are you spending with your executive business partner? And is it enough? And why or why not? And so are you spending 15 minutes? Are you spending an hour? And I have to tell you that I have partnered with executives where I'm spending like 80% of my time with them. Like, I'm in all the meetings, I'm like spending so much time with them. And to me, those were the really powerful partnerships that I enjoyed the most. But not every executive is going to be like that. Not every role is going to be like that. And so you just have to figure out, what do I want in my career? What does that partnership look like? And what responsibility can I take so that I'm training them and educating them on what this partnership should look like? And then, you can absolutely grow your career from there. Okay, so I am going to stop my screen share here for a moment. And I want to talk about this. All right, so now I can finally see the chat, which I love. I love that you guys are kind of like chatting and kind of talking with each other on this, but let's kind of talk about it. So I want to ask the question. So if you guys feel comfortable in the chats, please feel free to type in, like, how much time are you currently spending with your executive? Or do you feel like you're spending enough time? So if you're spending enough time, hit yes. If you're not spending enough time, hit no. So the other thing that I think is really, really important to really talk about too is, has COVID and the new, and I'm going to say yes, I know everybody's going to say yes, I'm going to assume, but has COVID made this worse or better for you in the way that you're partnering with your executive? Yeah, everybody's saying like horrible. So let's talk about that. So why is it making it horrible? So is it horrible because you're not seeing them in the same way? Is it horrible because you don't have the access to them? Do you feel that you can, and I know some of my clients, some of my EA clients that I coach, I know one of the things that they've really struggled with is that I feel like I'm being intrusive if I text them or if I call them in COVID differently than if when I was in the same, when we were in the same office. It feels different to me. And so they are much more hesitant to kind of like make that connection, which I think is something that you have to recognize that if you're feeling that way, then, it's okay to recognize that, but you still have to make a plan to fix it. The other thing that I would say is, and so like, let me know yes or no in the comments. So when you have a one-on-one, do you, in the middle of COVID, do you do it via video or do you do it like audio only? So those of you that are doing it audio, I think this is an opportunity for you to think about, has not seeing them face to face, has that changed it? Like, are you someone who says, I'm only doing it through audio or IM or like messaging or whatever, and I'm also someone who just said that it feels worse? Like, that's a correlation between the two that I think you have to look at. And the other part that I have to say is, the truth of the matter is that most of us really struggle being on camera. Like, we avoid, and I think it has probably gotten better as long as, we've been all living and working remotely in the middle of this. But if you feel like it's hard for you, like, I don't want to see my face, or it's an uncomfortable experience, practice doing it with people that you feel comfortable with, so that you can just, because at the end of the day, It's not like, tomorrow we're all going to wake up and go back into the office. And so if it's something that you're recognizing is a struggle for you, like you have to make a plan to work through what does that actually look like. In my house, I know for those of you that have, followed me for a while, and I live in a smallish apartment. So we have like, I don't know, under 800 square feet. And this is my office. And on the other side is my living room, kitchen, dining room, all that stuff. So we're all in the same space of saying, we're all working from home. It's not like all of us have like these big, huge houses we can go hole up in a room, and maybe you have kids running around and all of those things. And that's just the way that it is. And you can't allow any of those things to stop you from partnering with your executive and building that relationship, because I think right now being top of mind and being able to be that strategic thought partner is more important than ever, especially because we are not doing 2 out of the basic 4. Most of us are not. So most of us are doing, and before COVID, we were doing from the base, calendar, inbox, expense, travel. That was the basic 4 of what we did. And, many of us were doing much more, but the basic were those 4 things. And we're not doing 2 of those 4. So if that is you, then you have to make sure that you are engaging as a strategic business partner in a completely different way, and that you are being very proactive. I promise you, I'd love to hear this conversation, but how many of you are in that space where you're kind of like seeing your executive's calendar, and how many other people are not joining via video? Most people, when they get on with their executive, whatever level, they're doing it via video. But for some reason, I think as EAs, we really kind of struggle with that mentality. Okay, so we're going to pause here for a second before we get into some of the other stuff. And I'm going to answer, we have 3 questions in the Q&A. And Maggie was asking, what are good questions to get a brain dump going from your executive? And I'm going to show you one in a second, but one of the things that I actually really love is asking the question, instead of saying, how can I help you? That is a huge mental burden. And I can say this, as a business owner now and running my own business, that my husband, who is my EA, which everybody say hi to Nick. It is a much bigger mental burden for me to have to tell him how he can help versus he asked me what's top of mind. So when the question is like, hey, what are the priorities this week? I can say, from somebody who's running a business, it's so much easier to say like, hey, these are all the things that are on my plate. When he asked me like, what can I help you do? Like my brain just goes like, I don't know, I've got 6 million things I need to happen this week. So the question that I prefer to ask is, what's top of mind for you? What are 3 to 5 priorities that have to happen this week? Is there anything that I don't know that we should be talking about? So like kind of getting them, instead of the really pointed questions, you want to get them like thinking and talking, and then you just kind of take all of that information, absorb it, and then go from there. So Tanya was saying, my executive has told me to move around anyone's one-on-ones for more pressing matters. He's new to this role. Any suggestions on how I can groom him? So if your executive is very often moving their one-on-ones, then so Tanya, if you want to let me know, are they moving everybody's one-on-ones or just yours? If they're moving everybody's one-on-ones, you just sort of have to be that voice of reason that reminds them that that's creating a culture, and that's not a culture that they want to be a part of, right? Like they don't want to be the person who doesn't prioritize one-on-ones. Now, I will say this, and I think that this is one of the things that is really important for us to talk through, is what is the root cause of things getting moved around? And I know that as EAs, we don't like to talk about it, because this is one of the things you have to make the shift of being like just like this really tactical piece where somebody tells me something and I do it. And maybe you take the next step and you say, okay, somebody's asked for something and I'm going to, do what makes the most sense on the calendar. But are you taking the time to actually do a calendar audit? Every time things are moving and you know how many times those things are moving, what's the root cause? Like, why are so many things moving? And I don't mean to say this in a, I feel like just it's important for all of us just to be honest and upfront with each other in our role. So things don't move like that in calendars that I manage. And the reason why is because I spend a lot of time to look at the root cause and figure out like, okay, these meetings are all moving around either because we don't have an intentional meeting culture. Meetings are not being scheduled. A brainstorming meeting can't be scheduled for 30 minutes because people barely have an opportunity to get their thoughts out. So there's no, they're always running over. Like, what is the cause? And then you go fix the root cause of that problem rather than just constantly dealing with the symptoms. And I know that as EAs, we like to say that. We like to say like, oh, it's just part of the job and like, calendar Tetris, that's all true. But if you're going to be a really strategic business partner, you've got to learn how to make that mental shift so that you're fixing the really big issues that are affecting everyone in the business that only we can control. And when we don't do that and we kind of fluff off and sort of like, oh, it's just part of the job and that's just how part of the culture here. I think that we do everybody a disservice. So we have to take responsibility to figure out like, why are all of those things moving? Why? So for example, maybe one-on-ones, he needs to start batching his days. Maybe they shouldn't be, so maybe they should not be contextual switching all day. And, maybe you need to look at the calendar more strategically and partner with other EAs within your organization to make sure that that's happening from the top down. So that's just an idea. Okay, so tools. So Amy was asking, oh, sorry, Nick was telling me that there was a really good question on YouTube. So, hey, y'all. So the question is, I know my exec is extroverted and enjoys face-to-face. So I psych myself up to show up and look as professional and engaged as possible. Oh my gosh, I love that. Awesome call out for whoever that was on YouTube. 100%. I actually really like asking this question is now that we're all like from here up for our one-on-ones, what is your new power suit? Do you guys all? So my new power suit are my lashes because that's just what I do. I put on my lashes if I'm having a day and I want to feel like I'm all in. I've talked to other people who have like earrings are their new power suit. Anyway, I just think that's really funny. Like, I think anything that you can do. So huge call out to whoever this was on YouTube. I'm sorry. Huge call out. Yes. Like put yourself together and make yourself, feel like you're ready to take on the day. Agata, that's because your glasses are amazing. If you guys have not seen her glasses, they're killer. That's why she has power suit glasses. Okay, so somebody had asked the question is, what do I mean by batching their days? So what do I mean by batching days is that we have, so I'll just give you what mine are. So Mondays are strategy. So anything we do the strategy kickoff on Mondays. The executive leadership teams are on Mondays. Like all of this, who is it that your executive needs to talk with at the beginning of the week to go activate? So those are the people that they're probably spending the most amount of time on or spending the most amount of time with. So we do all strategy on Monday. Then like Tuesdays and Thursdays can be like one-on-ones and projects. And then, Wednesday can be, I'm trying to think like exactly the week. So strategy, like Wednesday is ops and then Friday is closing out the week. And I generally avoid meetings on Friday. And so now this is not a hard and fast rule. Things will always change depending if it's board season or if it's, like audit committee is, whatever, all those things always change. But it's really just a mental shift as an EA when somebody says to you, hey, I have this project and I need time with, Joe Schmo this week. You just offer Tuesdays and Thursday slots instead of going, oh, let me just see, the Monday looks open at 3. And what you're really doing is you're helping your executives stop that contextual switching all day long, right? So if they're doing strategy in the morning and then a random one-on-one, and then they do like a budget review, and then they're doing, I don't know, like a meeting on the all hands, and then they do like lunch with someone. I mean, it's just literally contextual switching all day long, versus you being really intentional about how they spend their time and start to see the patterns and saying like, look, they're always moving this around, or this meeting always goes late. Are we having enough time? Like what's the root cause of it? And then you start to fix those issues, and then you really show your value in a really different way. Okay, so Tanya was saying that her executive is new to the role and is slammed, and has no time at all. So what I would say is start thinking through like how much time are they offering, and do a calendar audit with him. So if you show him like, this is what your week looks like, and this is how much time you're spending 30% of your time in one-on-ones. Is that how you want to spend your time? If he says yes, great, move on, and like that's the choice he made. If he says, wow, that's probably not right, but when you bring data, it's different. Data-driven calendar decisions is very different than you look like you're kind of busy this week, or you're always busy. So providing them data, I think, gives them an opportunity to make actual business decisions versus like, oh yeah, I'm slammed and it feels like I have no time. Okay, so I think we got through all of those. So Amy was asking tools that I've used with my business partner to create laundry lists. So if I am in Microsoft, and I don't know how many of you guys heard this, that in my new gig, it's Google. Like seriously, I'm like, oh my God, y'all. But the cool news about that is now that I've had to do this is, for those of you who are new, I'm a certified Microsoft trainer, and I love, I've built my whole business around Microsoft. But for those of you who have heard me swear about why I love Microsoft, what's going to be cool is now I'm actually developing training that says like, if you're in Microsoft and you do these things, this is what you do in Google. So I'm really excited about that. But I would say if you're in Microsoft, I absolutely will use Teams and or OneNote, depending on like how your team is set up and how techy your executive is. But if you are in Google, then I 100% use Google Keep and or tasks in Google. So to me, that's just like really in Google Keep. And I would say for those of you that do use Google Keep, I actually help organize it. You know how in Outlook you can have tags. I just visually prefer in Google Keep to add emojis, like for example, a calendar emoji next to a bunch of meetings that I need to ask them about. So quick tip there. All right, so let me show you guys this for a second. So I want to show you guys some of the questions. Can you guys see the big screen? Can they see the big screen? Nope, you guys can't see that. You're only seeing the old one. Okay, hold on. You're seeing the calendar review? Okay, so if you're seeing the calendar review, these are the things that I ask them in the calendar review. So like review the calendar for the next 2 to 4 weeks. Do you, oh, you're seeing the wrong one. Okay, sorry guys. How about now? Yep. Okay. So if you're doing a calendar review, so some of the things that I ask are, what's your calendar review for the next 2 to 4 weeks? Do you have all the information and pre-reads that you need? What are actions for your meetings each day? Like all of that kind of very tactical piece concerning calendar. And then when I'm thinking through strategy, this is more like what's top of mind for you. What are the top 3 deliverables that you have for the week? Is there anything urgent that you need to resolve? What are your goals for the next 30, 60, 90 days? And how can we partner together to make that happen? So I will share all of these with you guys so that you have that whole list, so that you can, the questions that are calendar based are very much, what do you need? Is it the right, is this the right flow? Are you meeting with the right people? Is this enough time? All that stuff, very different than the strategic sync that's talking about deliverables, priorities, driving the business. Okay, so then I have, let's see, so what do you help you? Okay, so the question from Catherine is, how do you help the executive's calendar if the small business is heavy client facing? Our clients typically create their own meetings within their companies and then add my exec according to their schedule, with business increasing for us. Okay, so what I would typically say is, when you're thinking through what that looks like, when it's very client focused and not really driven by you, I would still block huge amounts of time and have the conversation first with the other EAs and say, look, I've blocked every, Monday through Thursday from, whatever, 8 to 2, whatever it is. And try to help it keep consistent that way. And sometimes if you can't work around it, you can't work around it, and they worked crazy hours and it kind of, it is what it is. But doing your best to just at least have the conversation with the person on the other end versus sort of going like, oh, whenever, sometimes you can't get around it, but when you can, absolutely try and take the steps to do that. Okay. So any other questions that we have before we are done? Okay, so Amy was asking if we can share the training for the October 8th. So Amanda, I will send you the deck so that you have it. You have the whole list of everything. That way you don't have to try and take all the notes down. So Amy was asking if we can share the link. We haven't went live. The link will go live for the strategic planning for 2021 will go live by the end of this week. So if you guys are interested, please let us know. Or you can just make sure that you're connected on our website and you'll get notified when we go live. Okay, so any suggestions on how to connect with someone who cancels meetings and can't meet you in person? So I've seen people deal with this a couple different ways. If it's your executive, it usually says to me that they don't see value in meeting with you. And I would take a lot of time and ask myself, the question is, are they canceling the meeting with me all the time? And if yes, are they doing it because we're only talking like really tactical pieces and they don't see the value in it? And so if the answer is yes, then I would say, look, I would just have a come to Jesus conversation with them and say, hey, listen, this is what we're going to do. We're going to be talking about these things. If this is not a priority for you, then we need to talk about why. And I think depending if you can have that real come to Jesus conversation with him, if you can't, then I would 100% bring it up at your end of year review and say, listen, I feel like I can't do my job successfully when I'm given no time. And honestly, if I'm being really truthful, it's bias. It's bias in the role. Most people will not cancel constantly and give, ask yourself the question, are they meeting with the rest of their direct reports? And if the answer is yes, then that's a serious issue that you need to bring up, because it's them really having bias towards the role, and it's probably going to be limiting in your career. So if you see them treating everyone else one way and you differently, then if you feel comfortable, call them out. If not, then, just have that real open conversation about why they continue to do that and why you think it's a big miss. Alrighty, you guys. So for those of you that want to hang out and just sort of connect, if I do these sessions in person, I always make myself available afterwards to hang out and ask questions and all that stuff. So I am going to post a link in here where you can join me on a regular Zoom. And then everybody whoever wants to join can just join via video, and we can hang out for as long as we can. And I will make sure to share the link or share this deck with you guys. If you guys want to, you can always email Nicholas, which is at nicholas@melissapeoples.com. If you have, any really specific questions and I can do a Q&A. And if you want the deck, please make sure, we'll send it to everyone who joined. But if you can email Nicholas, then he will make sure he gets it to anyone. All right, guys. So, okay. So I'm going to put the Zoom in here for anyone who wants to hang out and ask any deep dive questions. For those of you that were on YouTube, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate you guys spending your time with me. And I hope for those of you that this is our first time meeting, that we meet each other again. And for those of you that are family, I'm so glad that you guys joined us today. And bye, everyone. Alrighty, so for those of you that are joining, I'm going to stop us on